Hello friends, summer vacation in 70s America was a very special, almost magical time when the adult world retreated for 2.5 months, leaving a huge space for children's life filled with freedom, adventure, and discovery. It was a time without ubiquitous screens, without instant messaging and organized leisure activities for every hour. The days were long, hot, and seemingly endless. The hot asphalt beneath bare feet that burned the skin, the smell of freshly cut grass coming from the neighboring lawns, the chirping of cicadas filling the air on a hot afternoon, the hum of lawnmowers on Saturday morning, the long evenings smoothly transitioning into cool twilight and starry night. All this created a whole unique universe of memories filled with movement, laughter, friendship, and small joys. Riding bicycles in the 70s were more than just a means of transportation. They were a true passageway to the world of freedom, a symbol of independence, and an opportunity to push the boundaries of one's world. They were not always new, but reliable two-wheeled friends, from small three-wheelers to teen models with shifters. Kids got on their iron horses and raced through the streets of the neighborhood, inventing routes, exploring every alley, every unfamiliar street within the allowed zone, which could stretch for several blocks. Sometimes they would race to the nearest stop sign or just race against the wind, maneuvering masterfully between parked cars, trees on sidewalks, mailboxes, and bumps. The bicycles were decorated as best they could. Flags, brightly colored ribbons waving in the wind, rattling cataphotes on the spokes that reflected light and jingled as they moved, bells on the handlebars that made themselves known. The sound of creaking chain, clicking shifters, rustling tires on hot asphalt, gravel or dirt track, all this was a unique soundtrack of summer freedom. The feel of the summer wind in your hair and on your heated skin, the smell of heated asphalt, grass and flowering bushes that whizzed by, it all blended into one big, intoxicating feeling. The inevitable broken knees, skinned elbows, and abrasions on legs and arms from falls were commonplace and were seen as badges of honor. Proof that you lived an active life and weren't afraid to take risks. We returned home in the evening as it was starting to get dark, tired but happy, with dust on our cheeks, disheveled hair, and shiny eyes full of the impressions of a day spent on the move. Riding bicycles will always be remembered as a feeling of speed, freedom, and anticipation of the adventure that awaits around the next corner. Hide-and-seek games until sundown. Summer evenings were perfect for hide-and-seek games, which began right after dinner and continued until it was dark and the voices of parents calling their children home could be heard from across the neighborhood. The whole yard, street, or even several yards became a huge playing field. Ideal places to hide were thick bushes in front gardens that provided a safe hiding place and a little scratchy skin, dark corners behind garages that smelled of gasoline and dust, a narrow space under the porch, piles of boards or building materials, thickets at the end of the yard or in the nearest park. Everyone knew the best, most secluded and unobvious places in this neighborhood and used them strategically, trying to hide so that the leader would pass by several times. The laughter, the squealing, the adrenaline of almost being found, the shouts of, "I'm coming to find you," and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, "I'm coming to find you. Who didn't hide? It's not my fault." And the stomping of bare feet or flip-flops on the asphalt and grass filled the streets until dusk. Sometimes the search was so long that it seemed as if time had stopped and the world had shrunk to the size of this intense search. The feeling of heartbeat when the leader passed very close, the quiet rustle of clothes when you try to hide, all this increased the effect. Parents would come out on the porch and call home. Their voices would come from far away, but the desire to hide one more time, to find the last hidden person or, on the contrary, to be the last one found was always stronger. These games were not only incredibly fun, but also a great training. They taught agility, the ability to move quickly and quietly, observation, the ability to read the behavior of other players, to work in a team and develop spatial thinking. Drawing with chalk on asphalt, colored crayons bought at the local store, or sometimes made from plaster and pigment, were a magical tool that transformed the gray, ordinary asphalt of sidewalks, paths, and playgrounds into bright, temporary works of art. Colorful squares for playing hopscotch with numbers drawn in uneven children's numbers, bright rainbows, suns with rays, funny houses with smoke from their chimneys, cartoon and comic book characters, patterns and ornaments decorated sidewalks and yards. The sound of the crayons squeaking on the rough asphalt was the characteristic soundtrack of these moments. Each drawing was a small work of art, even if they knew that the first summer rain would wash it away without a trace, leaving only faded streaks. Sometimes the children organized real exhibitions of their drawings right on the sidewalk, inviting neighbors, children, and adults to walk around and appreciate their work. Whole stories and worlds were born on the asphalt. Castles, brave knights fighting dragons, spaceships flying to the stars, fantastic animals. Hands, knees, and even clothes were covered with colorful dust from crayons, but it only added to the fun and served as proof that you were engaged in real creativity in the open air. In the moments of drawing, the asphalt ceased to be just a road or sidewalk. It became a huge canvas for children's boundless dreams and fantasies. Water gun launches. On hot summer days, nothing brought as much fun and coolness as water battles using squirt guns. These guns range from small, primitive ones that fit in a pocket to larger ones with pressure pumps and water tanks. Water was not spared, drawn from garden hoses, wells in the yard, or simply from buckets filled in the house. They watered each other from head to toe, down to wet heels, sticking clothes, and dripping hair. Wet clothes dried quickly in the sun, leaving a feeling of freshness. No one took offense at the unexpected volley of water to the back or face. It was a part of the game, a sign that you were in the thick of things. The feeling of the coolness of the water on the heated skin, the lightness and carefree joy of these impromptu water battles remained for a long time, reminding of the most fun and refreshing moments of carefree summertime. Holding fairs and garage sales, summer weekends were often enlivened by street fairs, sometimes held on a neighborhood-wide basis, or more localized garage sales held right in someone's yard or garage. Adults would put old things on tables, chairs, boxes, and blankets. Clothes that had gotten small, books that had been read, dishes, furniture, toys, trying to get rid of what they didn't need or make some money. And the children, inspired by this adult business, often set up their own little businesses nearby. They brought a table, often an ironing board or cardboard box, to the road and sold homemade lemonade, often made from powdered Kool-Aid concentrate, but seemingly incredibly delicious and refreshing. Cookies they baked with their mothers, or handmade crafts, bracelets made of thread or beads, drawings, clay, or plasticine figures. They proudly called out to passers-by, "Buy lemonade, only 25 cents a cup." Haggling over the price of an old toy, comic book, or book for a few cents was a real lesson in economics, diplomacy, and the value of things. Sometimes at such sales you could find a real treasure for mere pennies. A rare issue of a comic book, an interesting old toy you'd been looking for a long time, a vinyl record. The day ended with counting the money earned, often a handful of coins and a few crumpled dollar bills, of which I was very proud and feeling grown up and entrepreneurial. These little markets taught me how to count money, connect with all sorts of people, appreciate labor, both my own and others, and find value in old things by giving them a second life. It was a small but important introduction to the world of trade and self-sufficiency. Pond fishing, with primitive fishing rods often homemade from a long stick, line, and hook, in a jar of dung worms collected after rain, or other secret bait like corn or breadcrumbs. Children would head to the nearest pond, lake, stream, or canal where fish were rumored to be found. The very process of preparation, digging worms, gathering gear, checking the line, was part of the ritual. The hours spent by the water were filled with a special silence, tranquility, and expectation, which were broken only by the splashing of water, buzzing of insects, quiet conversations of friends, rustling of reeds, or sounds of nature. The smell of pond water, tuna, freshly dug earth, and wet algae created a special atmosphere. Sometimes we had mini picnics on the shore, eating sandwiches and drinking lemonade, enjoying the heat, leisurely conversations, and a sense of solitude far from the bustle of the city. The very atmosphere of fishing, waiting, contemplating the water, the sounds of nature, gave a sense of connection with the world around us and taught calmness and patience. Those hours spent by the water seemed infinitely long and at the same time too short. Stargazing, summer nights, especially away from the big cities with their bright lights, were the perfect time for stargazing. After the heat of the day had subsided and dusk had fallen, one would spread blankets or sleeping bags on the grass in the backyard or go to the nearest open space, away from the streetlights, and lie for long periods of time gazing into the endless darkness, studded with thousands of twinkling, glowing lights. The smell of night grass, flowers, warm earth, and light evening breeze filled the air. We looked for familiar constellations, recognizing the outlines of the Big Dipper, Orion with its belt, Cassiopeia, the constellation of Leo, connecting the stars into imaginary figures seen in pictures and books. They made wishes when they saw a falling star, meteor, flying fast. They were seen more often than now. Parents, if they were around, told legends about constellations from Greek mythology, the names of the planets, stories about astronauts and spaceflight, which were actively developed then. Occasionally, a rare satellite or a slow-moving airplane would fly across the sky, eliciting exclamations of admiration and speculation. The silence of the night, broken only by the sounds of cicadas, crickets, cries of owls, rustling of leaves, and quiet voices of friends, and the vastness of outer space above our heads created a special feeling of solitude, and at the same time belonging to something huge, mysterious, and eternal. These nights by the fire or just on the grass taught us to dream of something bigger, to feel a small part of the vast universe, and to appreciate the beauty of the starry sky, which in the modern world many people hardly see. Shacks, summer was a time for building headquarters, secret hideouts, forts, and tree houses. The latter, of course, required wood and some skill. From sticks and twigs found in the forest or park, old blankets, tarps, cardboard, plywood, boards. Inside, you could hide from the scorching sun, hold secret meetings, read comic books by flashlight, play cards, or just sit in silence and dream, planning new adventures. The smell of wood, dust, old blankets, and earth mixed into a special staff aroma. Sometimes the tent survived only a couple of days before it was destroyed by a strong wind, a summer downpour, or, most offensively, by younger brothers or sisters not allowed into the secret society who staged raids. But the construction process itself, finding materials, planning, assembling, nailing, often crookedly, stretching tarpaulins, overcoming difficulties with materials and tools, was much more important than the final result. The difficulties only fueled imagination, resourcefulness, and the ability to work together. These makeshift shelters were a symbol of independence, secret worlds of children, friendship, joint labor, and adventure, where children created their own rules and their own little world inside the world of adults. Summer reading at the library. Unlike school-required reading, summer reading programs organized by local public libraries were pure fun. Libraries sought to draw children into their cool halls during the vacations by offering exciting programs. For each book read, often you just had to write down its title on a special card or reading diary. Rewards were given out. Bright stickers for that card, which children proudly showed off to each other, badges with library or program symbols, or even small prizes. Free ice cream from the ice cream truck. That one, pencils, bookmarks, balloons. The library shelves beckoned with hundreds and thousands of books with brightly colored covers promising new and exciting adventures in a variety of worlds, from fantasy and adventure to detectives and animal stories. One could spend hours in the quiet and cool of the library, escaping the heat of the street, wandering between the rows of bookshelves, choosing a book based on its cover or on the recommendation of the librarian, who often knew each child by name. Libraries often held additional events, loud read-alouds of the most popular children's books, drawing or crafts workshops, meetings with local writers or illustrators, and puppet shows. Reading in the summer opened up whole universes accessible without traveling or spending, developed imagination, enriched vocabulary and horizons. The smell of old paper, glue, and the quiet air of the library is forever remembered as the smell of knowledge and the endless possibilities that lurk in books. Summer jobs for teenagers, especially those in high school or college. Summer vacation was often the first opportunity to earn their own, honestly earned money. These could be simple but physically demanding jobs: mowing lawns at neighbors' houses, which became a real challenge in hot weather. Dog walking on a schedule, car washing, either in their yards offering services to passers-by or going out to customers, delivering newspapers, early in the morning or in the evening, working in a local store or cafe. Any such job seemed like a big step into adulthood. The sound of a whirring lawnmower, the smell of gasoline and freshly cut grass, the barking of dogs, the smell of car wax and soapy water. All this was part of summer jobs. The first dollars earned, which smelled like paper and a little sweat, were spent with special pleasure on things I had long dreamed of. A new record of my favorite band, movie tickets with friends, a new pair of jeans, comic books, or of course, ice cream and soda, responsibility for getting the job done on time and with high quality, the ability to negotiate prices, punctuality. All this was a real challenge and a source of pride at the same time. Sometimes friends joined together to mow lawns or wash cars, forming their own small teams of helpers, sharing work and earnings. Summer jobs taught you to appreciate labor, both your own and others, to manage, albeit small, budgets and plan your expenses, and gave you a sense of self-sufficiency and importance. You were no longer completely dependent on your parents for your desires. Even the simplest tasks done for money left a sense of real contribution to your own life. Berry and fruit picking. At the height of summer, as gardens and fields ripened, many families would head out of town to farms or simply go out to their backyard, if size and fruit trees or bushes allowed, to pick berries and fruit. Strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, apples, cherries, peaches. Depending on the region and time of year, the choices were vast. The picking process was not just a chore, but a real pleasure and meditation. We collected in baskets, buckets, plastic containers. The smell of ripe berries and fruits, leaves, warm earth filled the air. Gathering ended with the preparation of homemade jams, pies, compotes, fruit salads, and other goodies, filling homes with sweet, fruity aromas that lasted for a long time and reminded of summer in the cold winter. It was a time when nature generously shared its gifts, and joint labor turned it into a pleasant pastime and an opportunity to enjoy fresh, just plucked fruit, the taste of which was incomparable to the store. Camping. For many American families, summer vacations were synonymous with camping. In national parks, on the shores of lakes or rivers, at designated campgrounds. It was an immersion in nature, a break from the hustle and bustle of the city. We packed backpacks with tents, sleeping bags, flashlights, and cooking utensils. They went to the woods or to the water for a few days. They set up tents, often under adult supervision, built a fire with safety rules, especially in dry weather, cooked food over an open fire, hot dogs, baked potatoes in foil, corn on the cob, scrambled eggs in a frying pan. In the evening, they gathered around the fire, where it was warm and bright, told campfire stories, sang songs to the guitar, if someone could play, or just sat watching the flames dancing and the wood crackling in the fire, roasting marshmallows on sticks over the fire until they were golden and sticky, and then making s'mores, marshmallows, chocolate, and cookies, was a ritual that made an incredible mess, but was incredibly delicious. Sleeping in a tent, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the night, the rustling of leaves, the cries of owls, the crackling of branches, the distant barking of a fox or coyote, the sound of the wind was a special experience full of mystery, a little excitement, and a sense of oneness with nature. Morning awakenings were accompanied by the smell of fire, fresh dew, wet earth, pine needles, and birds chirping. Such trips taught independence, endurance, the ability to make do with little, to cook in the field, and to love nature. Backyard badminton game. Badminton has been a classic game for summer evenings in the backyard. Lightweight rackets, feather or plastic shuttlecocks, and a brightly colored net strung between two poles or even trees were all that was needed for fun. Families played or groups of friends gathered, often organizing small, frivolous tournaments. It was not always a sporting game with strict scoring, but rather a fun activity requiring dexterity, quick reaction, and coordination of movements. The sound of a racket hitting a shuttlecock, thwack, laughter, cheers of joy at a successful hit or funny comments at a miss, shouts of "out," all filled the air. All this filled the air. Sometimes the wind would interfere with the game, carrying the light shuttlecock far off the court, to a neighboring plot, to the roof of a garage, or simply into the thick bushes, and it was necessary to interrupt the game to go in search of it. Funny blunders, clumsy movements, falls caused fits of laughter from the players themselves and from the spectators. The game developed the eyesight, reaction, and of course, a sense of humor. In between games, they quenched their thirst with lemonade, water, or cold tea, had a snack of fruit, sandwiches, or cookies sitting on the grass. Badminton became a symbol of unhurried, warm family or friendly evenings spent outdoors, active and fun, creating a feeling of lightness and carefree. Soapbox cars, from old boards, discarded wheels, often from old lawnmowers, baby carriages, or carts. Bearings, nails, bolts, and other materials. Boys, and sometimes even the bravest girls, made homemade carts, bowlides, or soapbox cars. The designs could be very primitive, just a board on wheels on which one sat or lay down, pushing off with one's feet, or more complex, with steering, a rope tied to the front axle allowed turning the wheels. And even primitive brakes, usually a board that had to be pressed to the ground with a foot or a lever. There were competitions. Whose cart was the fastest? Who can drive down the steepest street or hill? Who could travel the furthest by inertia? The sound of wheels rattling on asphalt or gravel, the scraping of brakes, the clanking of collisions, shouts of delight, warning, and laughter all accompanied these impromptu races. The concept of safety was rather relative, and falls, bruises, scrapes, and abrasions were accepted as an inevitable part of the game, which was met with a smile and stories about their exploits. The process of building and improving the cart, finding parts, assembling, nailing, often crookedly and by finger, painting, adding improvements like flags, license plates, or even motors from cardboard boxes was as exciting as the riding itself. These homemade races were a display of children's engineering talent, ingenuity, ability to use improvised means, and pure, unbridled excitement for speed, movement, and risk. Buying ice cream from the ice cream truck. The sound of an approaching ice cream truck was the most anticipated and joyous sound of a summer day, especially in the middle of a hot afternoon. Upon hearing the familiar, often slightly fake tune, it could be recognizable tunes like Turkey in the Straw, Scott Joplin's The Entertainer, or Pop Goes the Weasel. Children would instantly scramble out of their seats, grab whatever coins they could beg from their parents or find in the house, often quarters and dimes, and run down the street, racing with friends and neighborhood children to see who could get to the ice cream truck the fastest. At the window of the van, a whole world of cold, sweet wonders opened up, beckoning with bright colors and the promise of instant coolness. Chocolate-covered popsicles, multicolored popsicles on a stick, soft serve cones, vanilla, chocolate, or twist, ice cream sandwiches, bright rainbow sherbet. All of it shimmered tantalizingly behind the glass window, making it incredibly difficult to choose. Sometimes we ordered something new, which had appeared in the assortment, and sometimes we ordered our favorite ice cream, which had been tried and tested for years and whose taste was familiar from early childhood. There was always excitement at the ice cream truck, discussing flavors with friends, showing off the chosen treat, joking with the ice cream man, choosing the perfect one that wouldn't melt too quickly. Even just standing in line at the ice cream truck was a joyous moment of anticipation and social interaction. These purchases created their own little rituals of summer happiness and gave you a sense of a small but very welcome treat that was available right down the street, in your neighborhood. Homemade slingshots were a classic item of children's weaponry and required some skill to make and use. They were made from strong Y-shaped tree branches, often ash or maple, carefully choosing the right shape and size. Sturdy, flexible materials were used as the rubber band, often pieces of old car tubes or bicycle tires cut into strips or medical harnesses. The leather part, where the projectile was placed, was a piece of old leather or other strong material cut from an old shoe or bag. All parts were carefully connected, often wrapped in duct tape for strength and grip. The projectiles were small pebbles, clay balls, paper lumps, or even berries. They practiced marksmanship by shooting at safe targets: tin cans, empty bottles, trees. Targets drawn on cardboard. The sound of the rubber band hitting the target, snap. The whistle of the projectile passing, whiz. The bang or dull thump when it hit the target or the slap when it missed were all part of the process. Sometimes there were small tournaments or duels of marksmanship between friends. Mastery of the slingshot, the ability to correctly tension the rubber band, choose the angle of aim, take into account the weight of the projectile and the distance to the target, was almost an art that required practice and patience. Of course, the safety rules were strictly observed. At least they tried to do so under supervision or after strict warnings from parents. Never shoot at people, animals, or windows, only at targets. Creating and using a slingshot required not only dexterity and marksmanship, but also developed an eye for sight and the ability to use improvised means. For many boys, the slingshot was a symbol of a certain coolness, mischief, and independence. Reading comics on the porch, stacks of brightly colored, colorful comic books were a true, albeit short-lived, summer treasure. They were bought at local drugstores, convenience stores, newsstands, or more often and more interestingly, swapped with friends or found at garage sales. Comics were passed from hand to hand, read to the hilt. The pages might be crumpled and the covers torn, but they never lost their value. They were read wherever there was comfort and light, on porch steps where you could watch the street, in a hammock, swaying in the shade of trees, lying on the grass under an apple tree, on a blanket in the park, or just sitting on the floor in your room. The smell of paper, printing ink, and a bit of dust mixed into a distinctive comic book aroma. Favorite characters: Superman, Spider-Man, Batman, Fantastic Four, Captain America, Archie comics became true friends for the whole summer. Their adventures were discussed, retold, their actions analyzed. Sometimes there were collective readings, discussions of plots, heated arguments about who was stronger, who was smarter, who was right in this or that situation. Reading was often accompanied by eating candy or chips, snapping seeds and sipping lemonade or soda through a straw. Comic books were an inexhaustible source of inspiration for playing games. Playing Superman, fantasizing and creating their own stories and characters in the margins of notebooks or in drawings on the pavement. This type of reading was associated with total immersion in exciting worlds of superheroes, adventure, magic, and fantasy that offered an escape from reality and developed imagination. Listening to records on a record player, in the era before compact cassette players, Walkman, and CD players became widespread, vinyl records were the primary way to listen to music at home, and the record player was the center of home musical entertainment. There was a large stereo system in the living room with a record player as part of it, or a simple, often portable record player in a teenager's room. Records of favorite bands and artists, rock, pop, funk, disco, were real treasures. They would choose a record, carefully take it out of the envelope, often with a beautiful large album cover, put it on the turntable disc, carefully lower the needle onto the rotating surface of the vinyl, and the magic began. The sound of the characteristic crackle and hiss of static, the clang of the needle lowering, and then the warm, rich sound of music coming from the speakers. Bathing in lakes and rivers, on the hottest days of summer, when even in the shade it was sweltering, the only salvation was water. We went to the nearest lake, river, pond, or quarry where swimming was allowed. They got there in cars with their parents, on bicycles, or even on foot if the water body was close. Jumping off piers or steep banks, if there were such, racing against the water, playing with a ball in the water, water polo, or just hot potato, just splashing near the shore, dousing each other. Sandy or grassy shores became sites for building sandcastles, finding beautiful pebbles and shells, if it was a body of water with shells, or just places to relax in the sun on spread towels. Sometimes we took inflatable mattresses, laps, or boats with us. The sun, the glare on the water, the smell of fresh water, seaweed, wet sand, or tina, shouts, laughter, squeals of children and adults. All this created a special, incomparable atmosphere of carefree summer recreation and pleasure. Swimming often turned into a whole adventure story, exploring the bottom, searching for treasures, swimming to the far shore, playing drowning. The feeling of water coolness on the heated skin, the sense of lightness and freedom that swimming gave is impossible to forget. It was the quintessence of summer pleasure, just being by the water, feeling its coolness and enjoying the moment. Making collections. summer, with its abundance of free time and the opportunity to spend a lot of time outdoors or traveling, was the perfect time for various collections. The children collected anything with passion and patience. Stamps, beautiful or unusual rocks and minerals, dried leaves and flowers, herbarium, butterflies and bugs, entomology, albeit at the level of collecting dead specimens or observation, candy wrappers, drink labels, gum cards with pictures of athletes, movie or comic book characters, e.g. Donruss or Topps gum. Each collection was a source of pride, an object to show off to friends, and an occasion for endless conversation. Rare or unusual specimens were sought at garage sales, antique shops, flea markets, in the woods by the water, or exchanged with other collectors, making important bargains. Sorting, describing, sometimes in a special album, cataloging and organizing collections developed accuracy, observation, patience, diligence, and even basic research skills. Sometimes they organized small exhibitions of their collections at home for their parents or in the street for their friends. The passion for collecting united children of different ages and interests, creating a kind of hobby clubs. Each found or received exhibit reminded them of a particular summer day, of the place of finding or sharing, and of their own little discoveries and achievements. Summer vacations in the 70s are remembered as a time of genuine joy, of true freedom unconstrained by technology, and of endless possibilities that seem real and attainable right there in your neighborhood or in the nearest park. Each morning began with the anticipation of new discoveries and adventures, and each evening brought a pleasant weariness laced with happiness and a sense of a well-lived, fulfilling day. These memories do not require embellishments and decorations. They are full of warmth, light, sounds, and smells in themselves. Even after decades, they remind us of the simple but profound joys that were available to everyone, and how much happiness can be found in the most ordinary things and moments. If you look at the world through the eyes of a child, the world has changed, become faster, more digital and complex, but the light of those summer days, the aroma of freshly cut grass after a short summer rain, the sound of bicycle wheels on the asphalt, the taste of melting ice cream from the van, and the laughter of friends playing hide and seek remain forever in the hearts of those who lived them. The echo of screams at the water fight, the squeak of swings on the playground, and the smell of hot asphalt still echo in them. Subscribe to the channel so we can continue our exciting journey through these wonderful memories and not miss a single moment from the past that shaped us. It was an unforgettable time, and it's nice to go back to it again and again, if only in memories, sharing them with each other.